All right, so yeah, today we're going to be creating this fake iris here. And this came about, I was watching this, I don't know, small YouTube channel. I think they're called like Slow-Mo Guys or something like that. I don't know. I don't think anybody's ever heard of them. But they had this episode where they pointed a high-speed camera right at somebody's eyeball and they filmed it dilating. So I thought to myself, hey, that looks gross. Then I also thought to myself, hey, that looks cool. I wonder if I can recreate that in After Effects with just using plugins that come with the program. And so I did. Alright, so before we get started on actually creating our iris, I'm going to show you like just an easy way to kind of get the same dilating effect without creating a whole new iris. So what we can do real quick is Command D, duplicate our footage, or in this case our photo. Hit T on the keyboard, bring the opacity down to about 50%, and then we can hit R and rotate it. Maybe just like that. All right, and then we can come in with our ellipse tool. And we want to go to the center of the original catch light here. Hit Shift, Command while clicking, and pull it out like that. Maybe hit F, feather it out a bit. And then we can go over to this other specular highlight. Shift, Command, click, drag. Just like that. Hit F. There we go. And then we can hit T. Shift Command H will get rid of our mask overlays. And now we have this. So what we can do is add a new adjustment layer. Go over to Effects and Presets. Type in Bulge. And it's under Distort, Bulge. And we can put that on our adjustment layer. And we can hit Shift Command H to bring up our overlays for this. We can move this to a center of our pupil. You can scale it up. All right, so we can take our adjustment layer, we can hit G to bring up our pen tool and just kind of create a mask around here real quickly. If you're doing this seriously, you can, take your time, get it to look a little bit better. Shift Command H, hide that mask overlay. Hit F. Feather it out a bit. And now you can adjust your bulge height to get that pupil dilating. Or we can do it the long way here. So let's just get rid of everything. Let's get rid of everything, not just the masks. Thank you. All right. And we're actually not going to touch this composition for a little bit. So we're going to go over to Project Window, and we're going to click on New Composition, and we're going to make it 500 by 500, and we're going to call this I Main. All right, we're going to set it to 5 seconds, hit OK. And now we have this. So now we're going to right click down in here, go to New, Solid. Change this to a black solid. Hit OK. All right, so under Effects and Presets, we're going to add a fractal noise. So it's under Noise and Grain, Fractal Noise. Add that on top of our black solid and actually rename this to Iris. And under our fractal noise, we're going to change this to Dynamic Progressive. We're going to invert it. We're going to set the contrast to 130, about 135, like that. Brightness, we're going to turn down a bit to negative like 15, 14, something like that. All right, so we're going to twirl open our transform, and we're going to make sure that this uniform scaling is unchecked. So now we have a scale width and a scale height. And we're going to make the width pretty small. Pretty small. So we can click and drag here. Something like that. And we're going to scale up the height to something like that. All right. And we're going to turn down our complexity just a little bit there. All right. So what we're going to do next is we're going to add an adjustment layer. And on that adjustment layer, we're going to add polar coordinates. So it's under distort, polar coordinates. Going to add that on top. And we're going to set the type of conversion to rectangular to polar. And then we're going to crank up the interpolation to 100. Now, as you can see what this is doing, it's taking this entire bottom edge here and wrapping it around the entire layer. So the top of our frame here is going to be the actual center, and the bottom is going to be the outer ring. That's important for when we're creating our masks for this. So we're going to set this to 100. I guess I moved it by accident. Okay, if that ever happens, just go to open this up, transform, reset. All right, so we have our polar coordinates here. And what we want to do is actually turn this off for a second. All right, so we're going to select our iris here, and we're going to go up to our rectangle tool, click on it, and we're going to create a mask, and we want the bottom to be just above the lower edge here. You can hit V, move it around. All right, so now what we see here is we have an opening, and that is our pupil. Now you can see it already starting to look like an eyeball, right? Or an iris. It's got the little tendrils of stuff. All right, so if we go under evolution options under our fractal noise and just go to random seed here, let's see if we can get a good one. We can see right here we have a pretty nasty seam, and to fix that it's actually pretty easy. So we're going to turn off our polar coordinates right now, and let's just name this real quick to polar. All right, so we're going to create another adjustment layer. So new adjustment layer, and we're going to call this seam fix. Hit enter, and we're going to add an effect called offset. So we're going to move it on the x-axis over here on the offset, and we're going to move it to the right. You can move it to the left, but generally I like to go to the edge here, just like that. And then what we can do is select our rectangle tool again, go like that, hit F. So we're creating a mask right in the center here. And then what we're going to do is over here where it says add, we're going to change this to subtract. All right, so what we have done is basically moved the seam and then covered over it. So now we've gotten rid of it.
And now, a quick intermission.
All right, so next thing we're going to do is we're going to go over to our iris layer, and underneath our fractal noise, actually set this to none. And we want to feather our mask. Forgot to do that. Let's do that real quick. Just feather it out. Get a nice little feather going. And make sure it's set to none. All right, so underneath our fractal noise, we're going to add a vector blur. So blur and sharpen, CC vector blur. Add that right on top. And this is not, it's going to be pretty subtle. So we're just going to go up to 4, like that. So we're going to go to our ridge smoothness, and we're going to turn this up. Something like that. All right, and we're going to turn up our map softness. That's about right. Yeah, so you can see what that's doing right there. All right, so that's our iris all set up. Well, partially. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our seam fix and our iris. We're going to shift select both of them, and we're going to pre-compose this. Shift Command C will pre-compose. And we're going to call this iris underscore PC. And that stands for pre-comp, basically. I like doing this where like this is going to be like the base layer for our iris, and then we're going to build up on top of that. So I usually call it PC. And actually, I got that from credit where credit is due, watching School of Motion on YouTube. It's pretty good. Check it out. Hit OK. All right, so now we have this. What we're going to do now is we're going to create our pupil. So let's just turn off our polar coordinates for now because we're just going to finish setting up our eyeball. Get this eyeball rolling. You know, eyeball, ball rolling. All right, so we're going to set the our pupil to be at 12% on brightness and no saturation. Hit OK. We're going to call this pupil. All right, so we're going to move this to the bottom, and we're going to go up here to our rectangle tool and just make sure we make a mask that starts at the top and ends before our fractal noise or our iris ends. Again, turn on our polar coordinates. There we have our pupil right in the center. Pretty cool. All right, so on our iris PC, we're going to add the effect CC glass. So stylize CC glass, drop that right on top. And on the surface, we're going to change before you would do that, it's automatically set to it, but we want to make sure that under bump map, our iris layer is selected and that it's set to lightness. All right. And we're going to change the softness. We're going to bring it down a bit. And by a bit, I mean a whole bunch. And there we go. That's fine. We're going to change the height. Actually, just bring that down just a little bit. And for displacement, we're going to set this to 7. All right, so we're going to twirl open our light settings here. And we're going to go to glow intensity. And we're going to turn that up just a little bit. I'm doing 118 here. And light height, let's bring that to like 90 something. Yeah, that looks fine. You can mess around with the direction. It doesn't really do much. But we want to change this to point light. All right, so we're done with our CC glass. And now we want to add a tint on top of it. Now my eyes are brown. So I'm going to make mine brown. So under map black 2, I have the numbers written down here. About 36, 78, and About that. There you go. Hit OK. And under map white to, this is going to be 50. Saturation is going to be 89. Whoops. Didn't mean to hit OK. And hue is going to be 38. So now we have this. And our final step for just creating our actual iris here is we're going to go and create another new solid, 500 by 500, and we're going to make this 33. So we're going to make this another brown, 68, and 31 for the brightness. Hit OK. So there we have that. So we're going to go over to our rectangle tool, select that, and we're going to create a thin line here. Maybe hit Shift Command H to hide the overlays. Hit F, feather it out. Something like that. Maybe turn back on our overlays. Hit V, double click. Maybe make it a little smaller. And we want to move it down to the edge of our iris. And then we want to set this to multiply. Here we have our eye set up here. And we're going to name this medium brown to be the outer ring. Okay. And turn on our polar coordinates. Now we have this. So what we're going to do is under our polar adjustment layer, we're going to add a bulge. So distort bulge, put that on top there. Shift Command H to bring up the overlays. And we're just going to scale this up so it matches our iris. All right. And you can see here we have. Now, if you go to a certain point, it will start breaking down. What you can do is adjust the taper radius. Maybe turn down the size of our circle here. So now we have our iris. So what we can do here is go into our eye pick or whatever footage that you have and take our eye main and drop that down on top of it. And we can hit T, bring down the transparency a bit, and hit S, make sure our move tool is selected, and we can scale it down. Maybe move it around until it's in place. That looks fine. All right, turn up the transparency again, all the way. And what we can do is create our mask around here. Again, for tutorial purposes, I'm just kind of making this quick. Feather it out a bit. All right, so now that we have that set up, what we can do is, so we can add a curves. So color correction curves. Here we go, and we can just add a little S curve here. I think that looks good. All right, so we have this. Now, another reason why this looks funny is in the original, there's a couple catch lights. So what we can do is duplicate our original footage, or in this case, our photo here, put that on top, and we can add luma key. So we can make sure it's on key out darker and up the threshold. So now we have our catch light. And let's see, edge feather, turn that up a bit. There we go. So I guess we can now animate our pupil. So go to polar coordinates, maybe go to the first second here. Set our original position to be about -0.7. Then go over here to about 3 seconds and bring that up. And one thing you can do is right click on this last keyframe, set it to easy ease in. And what you can also do is this is set to 3.3. So we can go back a few frames here. Set this bigger to like maybe 3.9. So that way there's a bit of a... If we play this back. And of course you can adjust the actual size. Maybe go to 3 rather than so much. Turn it down. All right, so we can go back to our eye pick here. And boom. Of course, you can mess around with the keyframes, make it look a little bit better, but that's pretty much it right here. If your iris is looking a little too crisp and doesn't really match the your footage, because this is kind of blurry, you can add a fast box blur. Pop that right on there and just kind of up the blur a little bit. You know, mess around with it until it matches your footage. All right, so that was a lot shorter than most of my videos. Most of them end up being 35 minutes to 40-ish. But this one, you know, as with any of the other projects and stuff like that, I encourage you to just mess around with the settings. But I don't know, I think that looks pretty darn good for being, you know, completely fabricated using fractal noises and stuff. It's not too shabby. Hopefully you found it useful, and thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.